They're getting restless. So that's restless.
Rabbi Itkin says I should go until someone throws an egg at me. Rabbi Friedman is. I rely on Rabbi Friedman for that. Okay, so the title of the class is "What's the big deal?" Chamisha Asar b'Av. There's some people that say that was very makbid not to say tu b'Av or tu b'Shvat, but to say Chamisha Asar b'Shvat, Chamisha Asar b'Av. Rabbi Greenwald's brother-in-law from the Advocates. What? Best. Oh, but the down that. That's fine. So most people in discussing Chamisha Asar b'Av associate it with the what the Mishnah describes, the Gemara describes about the Shidduch crisis in the times of Chazal and how they solved it with dancing in the Kromim in the vineyards. What the Gemara describes here would probably be totally ostracized and inappropriate. Nowadays, it would be considered very clean. I don't know about Lou, but it definitely wouldn't be a Chassidish environment. But that's what most people associate Chamisha Asar b'Av with. In fact, in Eretz Yisroel, they lahavdil, someone secularized it, Chamisha Asar b'Av, to be like the holiday of love, al derech lahavdil, a Valentine's Day on the Goyish calendar. In Eretz Yisroel, they romanticized the day for their secular day of love. Per chocolates, right? And of course, it's based on the Mishnah. It's based on what Chazal tell us. But there's another element of Chamisha Asar b'Av that the Rebbe spoke about many times. And I'm not an expert in this field. Rabbi Raskin walked out already. But I think maybe more so than the idea of the Bnei Yisrael Yotzis. And that has to do with the carbon eitzim, with the wood. And that also comes from the saying Gemara. The Gemara actually brings numerous things of what happens. The Mishnah says that there's no greater holidays like the 15th of Av and Yom Kippur. So Gemara tries to figure out what happened, what transpired on this day. The Gemara brings a couple of different explanations. Had I had my act together, would have a PowerPoint or a handout that has all the reasons, so we can go through them. But because I don't have that, so now I'm going to go quicker. It's going to go quicker without the handout. We'll go straight to the point. So whatever the Chazal, they have that famous occurrence of the Shidduchim being solved on this day. But then the Chazal give a different reason, and that is the idea that has to do with the wood that was needed in the Beis HaMikdash. Just to go a little bit the history of it. So the Gemara describes, based on the Psukim, that when the Yidden came back to Eretz Yisrael after the Churban, the first Churban, times the second Beis HaMikdash, they found that the Lishkas HaEitzim, the storage of the wood in the Beis HaMikdash, was completely depleted. There was no wood in the Beis HaMikdash. Wood was one of the most important, if not one of the most important components in the Beis HaMikdash. What was most? We just came from the 9 days and 3 weeks. We just learned all about the Beis HaMikdash. What was the most active area in the Beis HaMikdash? It was the most active area in the Beis HaMikdash. It was around the Mizbeach, in the Chatzar, in the courtyard. That's where most of the action happened. What is the most important component to the Mizbeach to make sure it's active? Is to have wood. Without wood, you don't have fire. Without a fire, you don't have karbanos. So the wood for the Mizbeach was a key element. What was the so when they came to the Beis HaMikdash and they saw that there's no wood, so the pasuk describes that there was families that went ahead, took it upon themselves, and they went and chopped that wood, they gathered wood, and they started donating it to the Beis HaMikdash. And on the different days that they brought it to the Beis HaMikdash, that became the commemoration and the establishment of that family's tradition to bring wood on that day remained for many generations. And the Gemara goes through the different days of when different families brought their korbanos on the different days. One of the families, their chazaka, their tradition was to bring it on Chaf Av, on Esrim B'Av. And being that, as we know, coming up next week is the Rebbe's father's yahrzeit on Chaf Av, and the Rebbe Farbrengt every year on his father's yahrzeit. And so in Gemara, Esrim B'Av, Chaf Av is the day that's mentioned about this family that brought the korbanos. So the Rebbe spoke about it many times, a Chaf Av, in relation to the fact that that's a date on the calendar that Chazal say. The Rebbe multiple times made a siyum on Masechtas Tainis, where this discussion takes place, and explain these ideas all the way from, if I'm not mistaken, the very first Farbrengt in Tafshin Yud or Tafshin Yud Aleph, where the Rebbe speaks about it. Well, what does that do with Chamisha Asar? So the Gemara says as follows: that the wood for the mizbeach have to be very dry. In order to make sure that the wood is very dry, the last day for chopping down the wood is Chamisha Asar B'Av. In Gemara, we see that Chamisha Asar B'Av is the peak of summer. That's why, as Rabbi Bassa mentioned a few days ago, or the last night, that the Chamisha Asar B'Av on the 15th of Av, the Gemara says the nights start getting longer, and being that that the reason why Hashem created nights is in order to learn Torah. That's what the Gemara says. The best time to learn Torah is at night. I haven't tried it much, but if you try it, you'll see that the Gemara knows what it's talking about. And if you learn Torah at night, so therefore, being that Chamisha Asar B'Av, the nights start getting longer, so therefore now it's a time to increase in Limud HaTorah. Something that I've also spoke about many times. The increase of Limud HaTorah on Chamisha Asar B'Av. So this is like the peak. In Gemara, as far as Gemara is concerned, we peaked summer on Chamisha Asar B'Av. And so that means that the wood is the driest as it's going to be, and therefore it's time to any wood that's chopped down after Chamisha Asar B'Av is not kosher l'malacha, is not kosher for the mizbeach. So today is the day that they chop down the wood, and that any wood, that the last day of chopping down the wood. And the Gemara says as a result of that, it was a simcha gedera, it was a great joy that they finished cutting down the wood for the mizbeach. No. So Chaffa was one of the days. Is that when Chaffa was one of the days that they would donate it. They chopped it earlier. It had to be chopped down. That's a very important point that you're actually bringing out. This is one of the clues that brings out here. Chamisha Asar B'Av, they stopped chopping the wood, but then whenever they donated it, could have been at any future time. By the way, one of the families that would chop down the wood, that their day was Yud Av, and the Gemara says that sometimes Yud Av is a fast day. If Tisha B'Av falls out on Shabbos, so the fast day is on Sunday. These families would not fast on Yud Av because it was their day of celebration of bringing the wood to the Beis Hamikdash. And we'll talk about that in a few moments. But so even the families that their day fell out after Chamisha Asar B'Av, they finished chopping the wood down to Chamisha Asar B'Av, and then they would bring it on the day that was set on the calendar for their family tradition. So the obvious question is, what's so great about the celebration? In fact, the Mishnah says, the day of the wedding and the day of the rejoicing of his heart. The Gemara says, the Maharsha says, what does this mean? I'm sorry, the Mishnah says, the day of this chasana is matan Torah. Rashi actually says that it's referring to Yom Kippur, not to Shavuos. In Kippur, where the second luchos were given, which is Yom Chasana, so that's the Yom Chasana, and Yom Simchas Levav is Benim Beis Hamikdash. That's when Hashem built the Beis Hamikdash. So Maharsha says, so we just finished saying that there's the two greatest days of joy are Chamisha Asar B'Av and Yom Kippur, and this is the 2 days. Yom Chasana, the day of the Chasana Matan Torah refers to when the second luchos were given on Yom Kippur, and Yom Simchas Levav, the day of the joy, is the building of the Beis Hamikdash. It's not referring to the actual building of the Beis Hamikdash. It's referring to the Beis Hamikdash could be functional. When can the Beis Hamikdash be functional? When you have the wood for the Beis Hamikdash. Not the wood Beis Hamikdash, you don't have a functional Beis Hamikdash. So here we see, according to this, that if we're going to take all the reasons the Chamisha Asar B'Av is so joyous, according to this line, it's the reason because he just finished chopping down the wood. And so our question here today is, what's so great about chopping down wood? The Gemara calls the idea of the wood that they would bring, karban ha'etzim, a sacrifice of wood. I'm sure people are familiar with the idea that something called carbon oila, carbon shlamim, carbon mincha, carbon chatas, carbon asham, carbon oila v'yoyed. What's carbon ha'etzim? So there's two opinions of what carbon ha'etzim means. And there's also different opinions of what did it look like on this day that they would bring this wood to the Beis HaMikdash. So one thing is clear. The primary element of this special day for these families, we'll get back to Chamisha soon. The primary celebration for these families coming to the Beis HaMikdash on these special days, whether it's Chaf Av, Yud Av, I think Chaf Elu, maybe I don't remember all the dates. When they would come, it's that they're bringing wood lema'aracha. They're bringing wood for the fire, for the mizbeach, and so they're bringing the wood. We'll call it to the lishkas ha'etzim. They're bringing the wood to the wood chamber. That is the primary function of that day. In celebration of doing that, what else do they do? So it also seems to the Gemara that they brought karbonis. Animals, carbon oila, carbon adava. In other words, they brought celebration, and in the Beis HaMikdash, the way you made a special celebration was you brought karbonis. And then we have that it says that they brought carbon ha'etzim. What is this carbon ha'etzim? So there's a machlokes in the Mefarshim what this means. Some Mefarshim say carbon ha'etzim means that they brought the eitzim, they brought the wood to the mizbeach. No, they brought the wood for the mizbeach, and that was like the carbon. So they weren't actually being a carbon of wood. They're bringing the wood for the karbanis. The Ritva, however, says that carbon ha'etzim means that they would actually bring wood onto the mizbeach as a carbon. In other words, in addition to bringing the carbon to the lishkas ha'etzim, they would then take some wood. They would send it up to the Mizbeach, not as for building the Maracha. As a gift to the Mizbeach, a carbon, like you bring an animal, you bring mincha, they brought this carbon. And within that, there's a machlokes in the Gemara between Rabbi and the Chachamim. If your carbon is a eitzim, we know carbonis have the sachim, have the libations, they have they need salt, they need oil, wine. Some of them have flour run along with it. What about the machlokes in the Gemara? Whether if you're bringing eitzim as a carbon, whether you also have to add these ingredients to your carbon or not. Either way, we have here two types of wood that's being brought to the Beis HaMikdash. We have the wood that's being brought to the lishkas ha'etzim. We have the wood that's being brought for the benefit of the mizbeach, and then we have, at least according to some opinions, a carbon ha'etzim, a sacrifice of wood being brought onto the mizbeach. Which is a unique type of a carbon. The Gemara tries to figure out, actually, the Gemara learns from a pasuk that there's such a thing as bringing just wood to the Mizbeach. And in the Sikha, the Rabbi actually goes in to try to figure out what's the source, what's the meaning, where do we know, how do we know that wood should be part of a carbon? I don't want to go into the details of that Nigla part of it. We're going to go now straight to the Chassidus element of it. The Gemara doesn't say that when a person brought an animal to the Beis HaMikdash was the greatest day of joy. But the Gemara says very clearly that the greatest day of joy wasn't just the day that they brought the wood to the Mizbeach. The day that they stopped chopping the wood to the Mizbeach, that was already a tremendous joy. So what we see here are that there's three special ideas associated with the wood of the Mizbeach. There's the day they finish cutting, which the Gemara describes as the greatest day of joy in the calendar. The Chamisha, and according to this reason, is because they finished chopping down wood. We have the bringing of the wood to supply the wood for the for the base, for the maracha, for the lishkas eitzim. And then we have the carbon eitzim. A person wants to bring a piece of wood to the mizbeach just to enhance the mizbeach, the fire that was on the mizbeach, by bringing a carbon to this wood. What is the significance of this whole simcha, of this whole concept of the wood? So there's a very famous Ramban, at least famous if you follow the Rebbe's Torah, which the Rebbe quotes many times, this Ramban. The Ramban says that what's the idea of karbanis? The idea of karbanis is that a person is bringing himself close to Hashem. What does it mean bringing himself close to Hashem? That he's and this works in another sikha that Rebbe says this is particularly applicable to a carbon chatas and a carbon Hashem. That they did something that distanced themselves to the Eibishter, so they have to bring themselves close to Hashem. And recognition that they're so distant from Hashem, chas v'shalom, they're chayiv misa. What did Hashem do? Hashem allowed that there should be an exchange for the person. You bring the animal on the mizbeach, and a person, the Ramban says, the person who brings the carbon should see for themselves as if they're really the ones that should have been brought on the mizbeach. In other words, they're really the ones that should have been giving themselves over to Hashem. And Hashem, in His great kindness, allowed the chesed avoda, the kindness of Hashem, that He allowed us to take and exchange the blood and the fats and the animal, and exchange that for the person's blood and fats, and that is the carbon. In other words, the idea of a carbon is that we're bringing ourselves closer to Hashem, bringing ourselves closer to Hashem in a way that we're completely serious nefesh, complete submission to the point that the animal is a representation. It's like the animal. Everyone knows the cartoon of the chicken that he asks the turkey on Thanksgiving, tells the chicken, like, look what we're giving up for them to celebrate. The chicken says, "This is what you're giving up for one day a year. You see what I have to give up for every Shabbos." Right, so the chicken's giving its life up for our celebration. You see, this animal is giving its life up to go up on the mizbeach. That should be ourselves. That's a representation of who we are on that mizbeach. There's different karbonis, and the different karbonis are different expressions of that commitment. So the way the Rebbe sees it is as follows: there's a general idea of a carbon. The general idea of a carbon is our commitment to Hashem. In our commitment to Hashem, every individual, every particular circumstance has its own expression of that commitment. But there's an overall layer of commitment that's equal in every single carbon. So carbon chatas, carbon nashim, carbon oil, carbon shlomim, those are different means of expression. In other words, let's put it into our language. We're getting closer to Chedish Elul also. The Altein in the beginning of Yigeres HaTshuva, Chedish El is a good time to start learning Yigeres HaTshuva. As Chamisha Hatzvi-Bais is also the time that we start saying Ksiv Sim Teva, that we start getting ready for the Yom Neiroi. So we talk about in the beginning of Yigeres HaTshuva, the Altein says that when a Yid does Tshuva, he has to have a zivas achet. He has to let go of the aveda. Zivas achet, just letting go of the aveda, and he has to make a commitment not to rebel against the Eibishter again. In other words, like this: every time you do an aveda, there's two components to it. There's the fact that you're disconnecting yourself from the Eibishter, which is equal by every aveda, and then there's the particular thing that you're doing that's wrong. Because if I tell you not to do something, and you do it, so there's the fact that you're not listening to me, and then there's the particular element in which that it was expressed. The same thing is, of course, in the positive. When we Kabbalah so machshman, I'll tell you this in Perik from Aleph of Tanya, you say Ikra Veda, you say Ikra Veda Yisharsha, you say the foundation of all Avedis Hashem, both Surmiran Asay Tev, it's Kabbalah so machshmayim. It's our commitment to Hashem. And then there's different ways that commitment gets expressed. Whether we're davening, whether we're learning, we're putting on tefillin, we're giving stock, or going with tzoyin, whatever it is. That commitment gets expressed in its own way. So there's two elements to everything we're doing. And everything we do or everything we don't do in serving the Eibishter, there's two elements to it. There's the fundamental concept that's equal by all mitzvahs and all avedas, the expression of our commitment to Hashem. And then there's the particular avodah that we're doing that expresses that idea. So on the Mizbeach, there are all different types of karbanis. Every one of those karbanis are an expression of our commitment to Hashem in its whatever that particular carbon was there for. But the underline of all of them was the wood, the fire, the wood that carried through all the karbanis, which is the general commitment that we have to Hashem, which is everything's hashgacha pratis. You can make different wood, you can make fires out of different fuels. Why do we use wood? Because what does the pasuk say about wood? Adam, eitz asada, that the wood, the tree, represents man. So using the wood as the foundation of all the karbanis is the way that we're expressing that everything that's going on this mizbeach is an expression of our commitment to Hashem. That brings out a very interesting thing here, that where do you see a person, like the most inner, deeper sense of a person? In the way they behave, in the way they express their emotions, or when they show you the intellect? Where do you see like that person? Where's the real expression of man? In their behavior, in their emotions, or in their intellect? Some people behave very different than who they really are. I'll give you a different, let's talk about behavior. That's the whole point of Tanya. Behavior can be very external to who we are. I mean, in Shut Atav, it does say that behavior goes to the Etzem HaNefesh, that's that Etzem. But the expression of man, like you want to say what kind of person is. You call someone up, want to know about this person, whether it's a shidduch employee, whatever it is. You're calling a person, you want to find out about them. What do you say? Say, tell me about his behavior. You want to know how he acts. You want to know about the person. Who is the person? Tell me a chacham of his. You want to know how does he emotionally express himself. Chassidus says that emotions have a deeper expression of person than the seichel, even. In Chassidus, midos are connected to semeach. David semeach chayim edaber. The midas of a person are tzemeach. And so the tzemeach is the expression of man. And so therefore, when we look at the Mizbeach, we want to see what on the Mizbeach is the fundamental Hashem, the fundamental commitment to Hashem that we're showing on this Mizbeach. It's the wood that's there. That's the man that comes up and says, here I am. And then on this wood, I'm going to put different karbanos, whatever they may be, for the expression of the particular avodah that I'm doing right now. What's the difference between the wood and the carbon? Both of them are about our commitment. Both of them are supposed to be expressing our commitment to Hashem. But when you have a particular commitment, let's say a guy's davening, excels in his davening. And when he's davening, he's a beautiful davening, committed to the Eibishter. His davening expression with the full bittul to Hashem. Guy walks into shul, and the guy says, "Ooh, take a look at Chaim, the way he's davening, as Hashem davening." As much as it's an expression of your bittul, your commitment to Hashem, but there's a tziyur. There's a full description of the person that you can go away with, like the carbon. He's bringing his animal to the Eibishter. But the guy says, check out my animal. Look at my animal has over here. Take a look at it. This is a Gzunta animal. You know, take a look at this. The guy's coming with his carbon. He has what to show off. It could be a complete kit. I'm not saying that he does show off. I'm not saying he does, but the possibility is there. The Metzias is there. The Tzir is there. The Adam is there. What about the wood? Look how beautiful my wood is. It's going on the fire. Here's another interesting point. No carbon is completely on the Mizbeach. Every carbon, there's a piece that gets taken off. The Kayinim eats some. The Yidden eats some. Even a carbon oila, the hides go to the Kayinim. You ever want to know why Rabbi Friedman and Mr. Solak are walking around in nice leather, cool jackets? Is Mr. They got some karbanas. And they got some It went to the Kohen. The Eidos went to the Kohen. Whereas the only I mean, there are other karbanis that were completely burnt there, but generally speaking, the karbanis, I think there are some karbanis that Eila talked to that were completely destroyed on the mizbeach or destroyed off the mizbeach, like in outside mechutz. But part of them are burnt outside. But generally speaking, most of them are burnt. What happens to the wood? Goes on the mizbeach, turns into ash. And that's the end. It's totally committed. There's nothing to show off. There's nothing to go with. There's a complete bittul that has no has no remainder, and even the ash is a totally. They don't say, "Oh, the wood is the ash." It's totally. It's a complete garment. So the wood that's supposed to be the foundation of all the karbanis is that expression of a complete commitment to Hashem. A commitment that has no tzir, even nothing to show off even on it. It's completely, it's the essential commitment that the person has. The avek, the avek, the ibigebenkeit to what the Eivishter wants. That's why by the karbanis it says reich nechayach l'Hashem. What is reich nechayach l'Hashem? Nachas ruach l'fanai shamarti v'nasritzayin. It was a pleasant smell to Hashem. The Eivish says, Nachas, I asked for something and it was done, it was completed. And the Eivish is happy. What happens when the Eivish is happy? You can be happy. Say, look how proud of me Hashem. Imagine you have a kid that comes home, they have 100 on the test. And the only reason why they have the 100 test, they're not looking to get, but they want to make their parents happy. They come home and they say, take a look, we have 100 on the test. That's what to show off. His parents are happy. He's happy. It's all simple. What about the wood? You said before that there's a concept of carbonates or bringing the wood onto the mizbeach as a carbon. Don't say anyway that's Zeich Hashem. I don't even know how proud the Eivishter is about it. I know the Eivishter needs wood on his mizbeach. I brought wood on his mizbeach. There's no pleasant smell associated, right? No, it doesn't smell good when the wood is burning. The smelling good is from the meat is burning. The smell, no one walks by. Oh, there's a bonfire. No one walks by and says, "Ooh, it smells like good barbecue." The Reich Nechayach Hashem was from the person's Aveda. The commitment to Hashem doesn't even say Reich Nechayach Hashem. This is the Eivishter needs me. I'm here. What do you need? There was once a wealthy guy, and his name was Sam Don't. He was a wealthy guy, lived in New York, and was a supporter of the Rebbe and his Meistis. I remember one time he got up to speak at 770, and he said he wanted to show off about his commitment to Chabad. He says when he went through a bunch of different times that he came, they asked, I said, Hineni. That was right. The only remember said, I said, Hineni. What was going on? Middle of his speech, the secretary put in there. Those in the back, could you hear me? I could hear you. Mr. said, no, it's not about his Hineni, I'm here. That commitment, Hineni, that's the wood. It's not a question whether David is happy, David is joyous, David needs more, doesn't get more, David just shows he's happy. Doesn't say Reich Hashem. We have to learn from a pasuk that there's such a thing called carbonates. It's not one of the carbonates. We can do it. The Gemara learns from a pasuk. This is an element. It's the fundamental commitment that doesn't come with any bells and with any excitement. What makes people happy? So Chassidus says this prior to 21st century research, but I'm not good at doing these things, but if you want to Google it and come with all the studies to show on the PowerPoints, you could do that too. Modern psychologists have all the studies to show that people are happiest, not when they do things for themselves, but when they do things for others. That's what the studies show. If anyone needs studies, or if you want, you can study it in Chassidus. Chassidus explains that true simcha doesn't come from self-satisfaction. True simcha comes when we recognize that we're something bigger than ourselves. What means that we're bigger than ourselves? It's about the Eivishter. That's what makes a person happy. Simcha tzadikim b'Hashem. when a person brings a carbon, it's a simcha. A simcha shtat. He's bringing a carbon. He's bringing something to the Eibishter. He's making the Eibishter happy. But because that commitment has a tzir, has a description. In other words, you could get lost into your own satisfaction and I don't know if I'd say show off, but see it as your own accomplishment. So the joy will be measured in accordance to that. Based on how nice your animal is, that's how happy you're going to be. Based on how great you daven, that's how happy you'll be. In other words, if the tzir, the simcha shel mitzvah is coming because of the description of the mitzvah that you're doing. So if because there's your own tzir involved, your simcha can be measured by it. But what happens when you bring the eitzim? What happens when you bring the wood? When you bring the wood, it's about the complete commit. Like we said before, it's the commitment to Hashem that has no bells and excitement to it. And so therefore that joy is a much greater joy. But still, the very fact that you brought it to the Mizbeach, so even though it's, as we said, it's just the wood, it's just the fundamentals, but it's still a piece of wood you brought on the Mizbeach. There's still something there. There's some type of a tzir there. There's some type of element there. There's something there. What did you do? I brought wood. I brought it to the Mizbeach. Not only that, even if all you did, and this is what the Rebbe spoke about in Tashin Aleph, is when you took the wood and you bring it to the Mizbeach, to the Beis HaMikdash, the Lishka Seitzah. So you didn't even bring it up to the Mizbeach. What did you do here? You brought wood. The Eibush needs wood in the Beis HaMikdash. You supplied the wood. And not only that, as I'm going, this is what the Rebbe spoke on Tashin Aleph, it's just someone else's carbon. It's not even for you. It's totally for someone else's carbon. That's even a greater joy. So we have the joy of the carbon eitzim. We have even a greater joy when it's not even your carbon. It's not even for you. It's someone else's carbon. That's even a greater joy. So there's a joy that carbon eitzim. In other words, if you want to go back, there's a joy of bringing a carbon oil, carbon shlavim. And according to some opinions, the joy of that day was because they brought other they brought other karbanos, and therefore they had to be joyous. Let's go back to what we said before, that Yud Av was postponed. They didn't fast on Yud Av if it was a fast day, because they were bringing their carbonates in. So what was the big simcha? So some Mishparim say because they were bringing other karbanos. Because, like we said before, along with the wood, some karbanos. So, but that's backwards. They brought carbonis because they brought the wood. So they brought the wood because they brought carbonis. So if a guy decides on Yud Av to go bring a carbon, then what? He doesn't have to fast. Of course he has to fast. So it can't be the joy about the carbon. It has to be the joy about the wood. Which wood? The wood that they brought on the Mizbeach. Carbon eitzim. It's one level. Besides the wood that they brought to the Lishka, they brought wood according to the shit that they brought, according to the Ritva, that they actually put the wood on the Mizbeach. That was a special joy. But even a greater joy is the fact that they put wood to the Lishka, that they brought wood to the for the Beis HaMikdash to have wood, and not even for their own karbanos, but other people's karbanos. That's already a double dose of commitment. Not only if the Eibush needs wood in his bed, I'm bringing it for another year. And here's the other thing. This wasn't like a plaque on each shelf. Today's wood is being sponsored by Chaim Shmedel in honor of his grandmother's yard site. And my wood, you bought a carbon today. Chaim Shmedel calls you up. I heard you bought a carbon today. I just want you to know that the wood on his Mizbeach was in the memory of my grandmother. It didn't work like that. You brought wood to the Lishka. Zionist, you're out. Chaim Shmedel calls you up and says, I brought a carbon today. Chaim Shmedel brought a carbon. Chaim Shmedel says, yeah, I wonder if it was my wood. You'll never know. There's a commitment to the Eibishter and to another year with no recognition. The Rambam says that the highest level of tzedakah, behind helping another person, but in tzedakah, the Rambam says is that you don't know who you gave it to, and the person doesn't know who got it. My father one time had a event, that was sponsored by, let's say, Chaim Itkin. But Chaim Itkin didn't want his name anywhere. Instead, there was another person who they were hoping he would give some money. Let's call him Rabbi David Friedman. So it said sponsored by Rabbi David Friedman. So I remember after the event, my father told me, the Rambam says that the highest level of tzedakah is that you don't know who gave it, and the person doesn't know who gave it. So, but the Rambam didn't imagine that there's even a higher level that you write someone else's name. So Chaim comes to Chaim Shmero, he said, I don't need the wood to the Beis HaMikdash. You want to carve it today? He doesn't even know if his wood is what's being used. And again, where does true simcha come from? True simcha doesn't come when you feel accomplished by yourself. True simcha comes from ultras. True simcha comes from our commitment to do something for the Eivishter for another Yid, the Yisroel. And so therefore that simcha is even greater. Well, that's not what happened to Chamisha Asar. What happened to Chamisha Asar? Didn't give the Mizbeach. Chamisha Asar, you're in your field. You finish chopping down the wood, and it doesn't belong to the Beis HaMikdash yet, because you're not going to donate it until 5 days later, a month later, whenever it is, whenever your date is. So you're standing in your field, in your reshus, you chop down wood that belongs to you. It doesn't even, it's atzei chulin. It's not kodesh, not hektish yet. Because if it's hektish now, then what are you doing in chaf av? What are you doing in chaf elu? A chaf av, you're coming to bring it and to make it hektish. So right now you're standing in your field, you're chopping down wood that's only a preparation that in a couple of days, in a couple of weeks, or whenever it is, you're going to come bring it to the Beis HaMikdash. That's already, the Eivishter is going to need wood. So I'm going to do prep now to bring wood. That's like as far as you can get away from what the mitzvah is, from where the kedusha is, says the Rebbe, and that's where the ultimate joy is. What's so powerful about this, the Rebbe, this is something you see in the Rebbe's thing in general. The less you could, the less you could identify the holiness of the moment, the greater the moment, and therefore the greater the joy associated with it. It's a very good thought process in life. People always want to be happy. It's one of the biggest, right? That's why there's so many psychologists, psychiatrists in the world. If you're looking to get a new job, you want a new industry, there's no shortage of patients. Why do people want to be happy? It's one of the most important, that's what people want the most. What's the Rebbe's answer? What do you mean to be happy? What great thing can I do? I want to do something magnificent that's going to make me happy. What's the Rebbe's whole mahalach over here? Is the opposite. The smaller significant, the less bells, the less excitement, the less big news. The more important, the more significant something is. That's what's going to make you happy. That's what's going to give you the real joy. And therefore, Chamisha Asar B'Av, what's the two days that are the greatest? Chamisha Asar B'Av and Yom Kippur. What's Yom Kippur? Yom Kippur also. What happens on Yom Kippur? Achas Pashana. We don't need. No one says, "Oh, you should check out my, simple something." How long did you say to go to? No one comes. How long did you down? Rosh Hashanah. How late did you go on Rosh Hashanah? And Yom Kippur, no one asks. We're in shul the whole day. There's no like, how late did you go? How quick? The most is how big was your break, right? Like you're not davening. Like that's the most you can get. No, there's nothing to show off on Yom Kippur. Unless you're the chazan, and Yom Kippur is our connection to the Eivishter. The Achas Bashana it's a unique relationship that we have with Hashem, and therefore Chamisha Asar B'Av is also that connection. That's what Chamisha Asar B'Av is. Chamisha Asar B'Av is that commitment that we have to Hashem, that we're going to go into our own fields. We're going to chop down wood, not for myself, but for another person who I'm never even know who's using it. And right now, he's not even able to use it yet because it's still in my field. But I know that I'm doing what the Eivishter needs of me right now in my own life, that eventually is going to be used, and the Eivishter needs. And that's where the ultimate simcha, that's where the bond, the chidul yachdach, the essential bond that we have to connect to Hashem. And here the Rebbe, just to finish, the Rebbe says, so we spoke about three levels of the wood. We have the chopping of the wood. We have the wood that was used for the korban eitzim, and then we had the wood that was used for the lishka. The Rebbe says, if we look in the Mishnah that describes the girls who went out to look for the shidduch, so the Brisa describes that there was 3 types of girls that would come out. It was Yafiyais, the beautiful girls, that would say, look at my beauty. There were the Miyuchases, the ones that had great lineage, Gezha, they would come out and say, look at my lineage. And then there was the Muchuares. Muchuares literally means the ugly ones. And they would say, come get married L'Shem Shemayim. So the Rebbe says, here's the 3 elements, here's the 3 points that we just spoke about the wood. Right? We said there's 3 types of wood. There's the wood that's the carbonates, and it's not a piece of wood, but it was a beautiful piece of wood. That was the wood that I brought onto the Mizbeach. Okay, so compared to the animals, all that, it's only wood. But in the wood life, in the realm of wood, so I can't say, I went onto the Mizbeach, I came with my big piece, I showed up to the coin, please bring this up to the Mizbeach for me. Look how beautiful I am. It was a carbonates, and the wood was brought up. So with all of it, though, it was still a piece of wood that was ready to go up. Then there was the Miyuchases. What does Miyuchases mean? Why do you want to marry someone who's a Miyuchas? What's the big deal? You want to walk around and say, my shved is? What's the best benefit of marrying a Miyuchas? Is that when it comes for your time to make shidduchim, you're going to say, my kids, you know who my grandfather is? Marry my kid. In other words, the best deal of a miyuchas is not what you get for yourself. So you married a lady whose grandfather was like they said, oh, so what? Your kids are going to be able to walk around and say, I'm a nothing, but my wife's like they say, come to my miyuchases. So now my kids are going to be miyuchasim. In other words, I'm not here for myself. Here's for your kids. It's not like exactly what the point is. It's not for yourself, it's for what you're ready to do for someone else. And then there's the mechares, garnished. It's you're in your own field, you have nothing to show off. I'm standing in my own field. It's a regular day. I'm chopping wood. Mechares, there's nothing in, there's nothing to show for. But that's the Shem Shemayim. That's what the Mishnah says. That is a mekach. That is something that we take. That's a completely L'Shem Shemayim with no self feeling for themselves. And so the Rebbe says over here is as follows: that there's those, I'm going to read this, and I'll read it in English, but word for word what the Rebbe says here. There's those that think that the idea of Simcha Avodas Hashem is dafka when Meker Tavelt, when you turn over the whole world, when you make a massive shturim. You learn the whole Teda. I learned so much. I finished a Masechta. That's what you think. That's where the real joy is. But when you do a little thing to help another Yid, that the other person should be able to come closer to Yiddishkeit. You say, well, what's the big deal? What's the big simcha? So I helped someone else put on tefillin. So I helped another Yid, Mikadav another Yid. What's the big simcha? The Teda is, it's true that if you had the possibility to do more for your own shleimus, and you don't do it, you deserve a punishment. You have to bring a carbon. But on the other hand, an Aveda doesn't put out a mitzvah. Therefore, the mitzvah of helping another Yid, Mekadav and L'Teda, the Teda says that this is what brings the greatest joy, is when you do something for another person. And even if something small, doing for another person, that's where the greatest joy is. So if someone asks you, what's Chamisha Asar? What's the great joy of Chamisha Asar? You tell them it's Valentine's Day, or you can tell them Chamisha Asar is a day where we recognize that even when we do a small thing for another Yid, this is where the emes of simcha, this is where the real joy and the ultimate joy comes. This is the wood that you're chopping down in your own house that no one even knows about, and that's where the real joy and Yiddishkeit and life and itself can be found.
Rabbi,
Yes.
you said that people would